Hello everyone, this is Matt from Real World Review, and today we're going to be fixing the pink line on the OnePlus, just kidding, we're going to be fixing the screen on the Google Pixel 8. So the tools that we're going to need are going to be a razor blade, a plastic pick, and some heat. You also need some clamps and some glue for those clamps. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to heat up the screen and try to lift out the screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a decent amount of heat around the display, and I'm going to get a razor blade to get under the display and under the frame that display sits on. And I'm going to use a plastic pick to get just into where the frame is. I don't want to go too far because there are some pins and possibly some cables that I don't want to damage, but ultimately you want to go around the perimeter of the screen and make sure to loosen up that adhesive. Obviously, if your screen's cracked, this might be a little bit difficult, but it does sit on a frame, so this should be a lot easier than doing something on like a Pixel 7a. But ultimately, once you go around the edge of the screen, you want to lift it up over to the left, because then we can get to the cable. And the way to remove this cable is to lift up this little metal piece that will bend a little bit, so we want to bend it back in place. But then you can unplug the display cable very carefully, making sure not to pick any components up while you're lifting up this display. I kind of recommend the bottom portion, but there are some components pretty much everywhere, so just be careful when you remove that. Then there is some adhesive that goes around the edge of the phone, and you want to remove all that adhesive, or at least make it clean. I think it wasn't really too difficult to remove. It's not like a, Pixel 7, which is like almost impossible to remove all that adhesive, but it should come out pretty easily, and you want to make sure that every corner is clean, so then when you put the new screen in, it sits down flat. So once you're done cleaning that, we want to remove the fingerprint scanner, because on our new screen, it does not have a fingerprint scanner. Well, it technically does, but what we're going to do is we're going to move over this fingerprint scanner so then we don't have to program anything, we don't have to mess with any of that stuff, we just know that it's going to work. So I'm going to loosen up this cable like this. You can use a little bit of heat if you want to, but what you're going to do is when you get to where the sensor is, where that little metal piece is, you're going to heat it up. Yes, this cable will get hot, and you're going to kind of wiggle that cable out very carefully to loosen up the adhesive and eventually remove this piece. Now, for some reason on this phone, it was a lot more difficult than other phones, maybe because of that metal piece is not allowing the heat to transfer in. But either way, it'll eventually come out, and luckily that sensor is not damaged. Now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to watch how this video focused on my hand instead of the screen, but ultimately what you're going to do is you're going to plug in that cable on the new screen. Yes, it is a new screen. It's not the same screen, it's a new screen. That's a Samsung Note 20 Ultra reference. And we're going to plug it in, and we're going to set it where that cable will normally go. So it should line up properly once you plug in that cable, but you want to make sure that that sensor is not being covered and that it's sitting in the spot that it's supposed to be, so then your finger will read when the sensor is trying to read it. Then this little padding that goes over, I guess, the cameras, I'm not entirely sure where it goes over now. That little padding I moved over. It's not crucial if you move it over, but I do recommend moving it over if it's something you can easily do. And then same thing for the camera, it should be fine, but I do recommend moving that camera over more than this little padding on the top. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to plug in the display, and we're going to power on the phone to make sure that not only does the display work, but also the fingerprint scanner works. And after a lot of testing, yes, the fingerprint scanner does work. So what I'm going to do now is power off the phone. I'm going to put that little piece that goes around the camera, I'm going to put that back in here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the metal panel on so then it clamps down that screen. And I'm going to grab the glue and I'm going to apply glue in the areas where that adhesive was, all around the edges, making sure to get a decent amount on there so then it can hold this screen in place. So I'm going to do it top, right, bottom, and then I'm going to do it on the left side. And then what we're going to do is we're going to carefully set the screen back in place, kind of clamping it in all places that it needs to be. And then we're going to grab actual clamps and we're going to put it around the display. I like to do 3 on each side. Just make sure not to over tighten these clamps because you can still damage the display, especially with the way that this had that line showing up. Then what you're going to do is you're going to let this sit for a couple hours. And then after that, you can take it out of the clamps. You can clean it up, any excess glue that is leaking out. Hopefully you don't have any, but essentially you're all done. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, hopefully this helped, and as always, thanks for watching.